Kogan Mobile. Get started for just $4.90 for 30 days. koganmobile.com.au/footy.
Dwayne's World with Dwayne Russell.
Hello and welcome to the program. Great to have your company wherever you might be listening to Dwayne's World. It's Midday Madness time, so you call, you get on. That's the Midday Madness promise and that open line number. If you'd like to jump on anything in the world you'd like to discuss is 1300 736 736. So 1300 736 736. You call, you get on for the next couple of hours of Midday Madness, and that number is brought to us by Werribee Kia. They're all down there at Werribee Kia, and they'd love to see you if you're in the market for a new or used car. They've got a huge new and used car showroom at Werribee Kia, and they've got a heap of demos you can drive as well, including the Kia My 22 Cerato that's now in stock. Big show later on in the program. Sean Higgins is going to join us in his regular spot, so we're looking forward to having a chat to the star Cat and whether he's going to be back in this week. The round 16 NAB Rising Star as well. Justin McInerney is going to have a chat. Adelaide star defender Jake Kelly. We'll check in with Brett Phillips on the latest on Wimbledon as well. All that later on in the program. But 1300 736 736. It's Talkback Radio, so let's have a chat about all the things that got lost in the wash yesterday. There was so much happening yesterday that it was actually hard to mention everything that was happening yesterday, but there is so much that has gone on in the last couple of days that we haven't quite got to yet. Didn't have a chance to talk yesterday about the Luke Shuey suspension that we thought he was going to get and the one he didn't get. No suspension, $2,000 fine for throwing an arm back, hitting Swan Callum Mills in the jaw. Same action could have broken someone's jaw, but the MRO decision was again based on the outcome, not the action. So careless, low impact, high contact. Bob Murphy on Bob and Andy said that he should get 4 games. He didn't get 4 games. He got a $2,000 fine. So we talked about it on this program a couple of weeks ago, and I asked the question to you a couple of weeks ago, so I'll ask it again today. Is throwing an arm, a fist back, to break the hold someone has on your jumper, to hit their arm, punch their arm, to break the hold, is that a football act or not? Because that's the thing, that if we're going to break it all up into football acts and non-football acts, if a bloke has your jumper and you throw your arm back to break his hold and try and hit him on the arm and you accidentally get him in the jaw, then is that going to be deemed a non-football act because you're throwing a fist back? Or if you're in pursuit of the ball, if you're about to lead, if you're about to go at a ball up and your tag has got you by the arm or the jumper and you throw your arm back, then will that be deemed a football act because he shouldn't be hanging onto your jumper anyway? In the end, Luke Shuey didn't get a suspension, a $2,000 fine. Didn't really chat about that much yesterday, but the MRO's decision only came through after we got off air. So we'll have a chat about that, 1300 736 736. Liam Stocker, unlucky not to be the NAB Rising Star of the round, but we'll have a chat to Justin McInerney, who is. A few Carlton fans, if you want to talk about Liam Stocker, by all means, give us a call. The boundary umps with their shallow throw-ins was something that I thought would get a mention yesterday. One boundary umpire in the Geelong game Sunday nearly, I reckon, threw it into the back of his own legs. So we've got to fix that. We get repeat stoppages so often now because the boundary umpire, I think, doesn't throw it in far enough. So stoppages, by the way, have gone up. If you haven't noticed, if you haven't read the article, stoppages have gone up. But repeat boundary umpire performances, I think we've got to draw an end to as well. So surely we've got to, stop the ruckman just knocking it back over the boundary and getting another ball in. And as I mentioned with Kane Corns, I mentioned on this show 2 months ago, the goal-kicking accuracy was steadily getting worse, not better. So in this professional era, the first half of this season, it was going down. So instead of being up around over 50% and getting better, goal-kicking a decade ago was over 50%. It had come down to 46-odd%. Well, we're talking about, there's articles now in the wake of Steve Hocking's departure saying, well, scorings hasn't gone up under Steve Hocking. He hasn't fixed that. But let me tell you, scoring accuracy right now is an issue because it's down at an all-time low. This last month, it's come down to 45.5% goal-kicking accuracy. That's the worst it's been in the history of recording scores. So here we are in the professional era, and right now, this last month, if this stayed for the entire season, it'll be the worst goal-kicking accuracy season we've ever had. On the weekend just gone, so the weekend we just had, the Suns kicked 10 goals, 17. Melbourne kicked 7 goals, 13. Adelaide kicked 8 goals, 11. Fremantle kicked 8 goals, 16. Hawthorn kicked 7 goals, 11. West Coast kicked 3-8. And Collingwood kicked 8 goals, 13. That was just the weekend gone. So it's okay to whack Steve Hocking and say, well, you haven't increased scoring, Steve. How come the scoring hasn't gone up? But he can't fix goal kicking. He can't stop goal kicking accuracy from going down. Surely, I don't know if it's the defensive-minded coaches who don't want to score, or whether they just don't practice it enough. But if you've got a thought on that, I know it's a rehash from what I said 2 months ago when scoring was down, but if we want scoring to go up, the easiest way to fix it is to get accuracy back above 50% for the first time in a decade. Your thoughts on that? 1300 736 736 is the number, and you can also send through a text on the Tempur text machine, TEMPUR, mattresses like no other. Michael in Caroline Springs, as we go to the phone, talking to you, Michael.
Good morning, or afternoon, sorry, Dwayne. Yeah, that in conversation, a couple of weeks ago on Footy Classified, they actually did the adjusted ladder, and if you gave turned every point into a goal, and I think my side, Carlton, would have been fourth at that stage of the season on that. Now, we know a lot of points aren't actually missed by kicks, but one thing I think is interesting about this whole discussion is during trade time, you don't usually hear people say, oh, he's got a great tank and he's a clean hands and a neat kick, but you never actually hear someone saying, and he's a great shot at goal. When they were talking about young.
No, you hear he's a tackle machine. Oh, he's a great tackler. He's a tackle machine. We'll get him in for his tackling, but he ends up kicking 1 goal late.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's interesting that that's not even a topic of discussion, and that's all got down to the fact that they want to recruit athletes in a lot of cases, and athletes suit the game, and maybe, those natural footballers. Like you look at somebody like Jack Higgins, I know he's had his issues, but he's just a natural footballer when it comes to things like kicking at goals, and he has a really, used to have a really nice technique. Guys like Tex Walker, just beautiful shots at goals, don't even think about it. And you would have thought that that's worth its weight in gold these days.
Appreciate your call, Michael. Thanks for kicking us off. And our caller of this week, by the way, will win a 365-day phone plan with unlimited talk and text and $230 gigabytes worth of data worth $190 thanks to Kogan Mobile, with the caller of the month winning an iPhone 12 mini thanks to Kogan Mobile. We've also got a nice couple of other prizes to give away as well, including 2-player mini golf experience at Albert Park Mini Golf. You can visit albertparkgolf.com.au. And Alan, if you're on the road, you can have the mini golf experience to get us underway. 1300 736 736 if you've got a thought on the scoring or any of the stuff that got lost in the wash yesterday. Frank in Melton is on the line. Welcome to you, Frank. Great to have you on the program.
Yeah, well, listen, mate, I've played football for nearly 25 years, and to get this scoring up, what we've got to do is stop these stoppages. These stoppages just create a pack of players everywhere, whether it's around the forward line and the back line. The forwards can't lead out. They've got nowhere to go, no room to move. The umpires need to grab these blokes that are holding the ball, laying down on the ground, pig rooting the ground, trying to pretend they're handballing it out, which just it's a scam. They're getting away with it. They're holding the ball. You've got 5 seconds to hold that ball and get rid of it legally, and if you don't, it's holding the ball. They're the rules. What do you reckon? Heaps
of callers on the line, Frank. I appreciate your call, Frank. Mark is back as Marsh is on the line. Dom in Burwood, Matthew and Hendon all on the line. Merv in Tullarook, though, has got a thought on coaches approaching to scoring, and there's a couple coming through on the text as well that I like. And one here, there's an opening for a side to put a premium on goal kicking to improve their standing in the league. And I agree with that 100%. If you actually focused on goal kicking, and I mentioned it yesterday again with Jack Silvani having 90 minutes worth of shots pre-game to get his goal kicking right, because he came into the game with 4 goals, 10, and he kicked some very valuable goals in Carlton's victory. And in fact, they kicked straight, and Fremantle didn't kick straight. Fremantle kicked 8 goals, 16. And again, Fremantle, they'd be in the 8 if they could kick straight. Merv in Tullarook, welcome to you, Merv.
Yeah, g'day, how are you?
Yeah, good, thanks.
I just think if you look at the coaches and how they make the player go down the line, defend into the forward pocket, go defensive and push wide, when the ball is so wide, it's very hard to go front and centre because it's almost like they don't drop their eyes to the leading forward. It's almost like the second or plan B is to go wide and have a throw in.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know why. Well, I don't like it. I know why. Because they want to get a throw in. So coaches are coaching not to kick it to the teeth of goal and have an opportunity of one getting over the back and being a goal. They're actually protecting against a behind, giving the ball back to the opposition. So they want you to kick it to the pocket and get a ball in, Alan. So again, we've got a situation where coaches are coaching for the defensive structure and not coaching for score.
I agree, Dwayne. Thanks.
Thanks for your call, Alan. I really appreciate it. Matthew in Hendon, you there, Matthew? Sorry, that was Merv. Alan on the road. Yeah, how are you?
This is a very good thing. This is the greatest game on earth. It's going to the dogs because the players, the umpires, the experts can't see. The fabric of the game, you're destroying because you should be playing with only about 14, 15 men. Start off with 17. Have a look, 36 players on the other half of the ground. They kick the ball to the goals and they can't, from 100 metres out. Of course it won't be catastrophic. They play along, I told Russell Ebert on Talkback, they play along the boundary line all the time. Why do you play along the boundary line when you've got this huge grounds? What the hell's wrong with people? Kicking for goal. Richmond, I tipped Richmond to win 2 weeks ago, 2 goals 10. Everything is falling apart unless you, I'm blind, I've had a white cane for 40 years, and unless you reduce the players, the game is going to get worse. There's 200 players out with injuries. Have a look at the Geelong game. You had the Guthrie out in the first few minutes. You had Norton out. Then you had Whiplash with Hawkins and another player out. You had about 6 players on the injury list. Davis got a laceration on the cheekbone. Dozens of players were coming out with cuts and bruises, bleeding from the face. What, isn't that head trauma? Isn't that, how do you get cuts on the face unless you've been hit in the head?
Yeah, I appreciate your call, Matthew. I do. In Hendon, I do appreciate it. Couple here on the text as well. Hi, Dwayne. Last week, Richmond kicked 2 goals 10, North kicked 9 goals 18, Melbourne kicked 9 goals 14, and the Dogs kicked 13 goals 20. This is crazy. Right in Hobart. And again, Rod, I'm agreeing with you. I mean, I talked to Champion Data quite a bit. Jacob Wilson, Daniel Hoyne and the team, they're fantastic. But when you see these articles, scoring's gone down and kind of pointing to Steve Hocking as the blame, you know, you try and work out, okay, well, has 6, 6 and 6 ruined the game? Has the stand rule ruined the game? Why has scoring not gone up? And then you look at something as simple as goal kicking and you think, wow, we're down to 45.5% for the last month, the worst in 150 years. I mean, come on, that is the issue, isn't it? Surely, but no one wants to mention it. It's these damn rules, obviously. Well, maybe it's a bit of fatigue, and that's the other issue. I mean, we did hear quite a bit yesterday on this program that 6, 6 and 6 hasn't fixed congestion because it only fixes it for the first minute after a goal. But at least it's made the game a bit more positional, I think. So I think it has helped. But you can't win if you're Steve Hocking. KB wanted to reduce interchange for years. KB wanted the cap put on, bring it down. He was beating that drum for a long, long time. So Steve Hocking actually does something about it, brings fatigue back. He puts a cap on interchange and reduces it a bit. But he gets whacked for not doing enough. So he gets whacked for not reducing the cap enough. And he also gets whacked for the people that didn't want a cap, that reckon that that's wrecking things as well. So you can't win either way with that. So there's a lot of stuff that's happened that I understand is not going to necessarily please everybody. But surely if we fix goal kicking, that would please everybody. Dan Andrews has spoken today, the Premier, on the reports that the Grand Prix is set to be cancelled and what it means for the Australian Open in 2022. So not just the F1 Grand Prix, but the MotoGP as well. I'm heading back to your calls very shortly. On 1300 736 736 is the number, 1300 736 736. But we need to play you this. It looks like the F1 GP won't be here, and neither will the MotoGP. Here's Dan Andrews, and this goes for a couple of minutes.
Are you disappointed that Grand Prix is set to be cancelled?
Well, I'll let the Minister for Major Events speak to that matter, but what I know and understand is that with travel caps being halved, with us not yet being at a critical mass of Victorians and Australians who've got the jab. We're a long way away from that, and the protection and the freedom and the choices and options that gives us running big international events is very, very challenging. We'll get to that point by the end of the year, once the supply of Pfizer, once Moderna and other vaccines are here in sufficient numbers. We'll be able to really ramp up, as General Fruin and the Prime Minister have outlined. But until that point, we have to do everything we can to safeguard not bringing the virus in, particularly the Delta variant. And that's why National Cabinet last Friday endorsed a plan that was essentially put forward by our state to halve those caps. That doesn't eliminate risk, I want to be clear about that, but it does in fact reduce it. And then we can just focus on getting everybody vaccinated, giving everyone an opportunity to get the jab. Can't force everybody to do it, we can only encourage them. But once we get to that point, whatever that magic number may be, where everyone who wants to be vaccinated and can be convinced to be vaccinated has been, then we will have a greater degree of protection, more options, more freedom, and the ability to run major events and have people move much more freely in and out of our country without the risk of importing a strain that is at least twice as infectious and will run and outrun any contact tracers anywhere in the world.
Is there enough?
Sorry? No, I think we've got a very good working relationship with F1. The question is, though, can what they need and what we can reasonably agree to, so there's no conflict there, can that deal, if you like, can that set of arrangements be made to work when you've halved the number of people coming into the country, when you've got 10% of people vaccinated, when you want and need 70 or 80% to have had the jab? We're not at that point. The timing doesn't quite line up, and that makes it very, very challenging. But as to the status of that event this year and what it looks like for the future, I'll let the Minister speak to that later on in the day. I'm just making the point more broadly. There's no conflict there. We work very closely with all of our partners, particularly F1 and indeed the MotoGP as well. But some things are possible in a pandemic and some things are really hard.
Are you confident tennis can, given the timelines, can
Yeah.
tennis be held in late January next year?
I am confident of that, yes. And the reason I am confident of that is that that's exactly after the period I've just been talking about, where we hopefully hit that magic number, whatever that might be. Or to look at it the way I do, everyone who wants to be vaccinated, everybody who can be convinced to be vaccinated, has been. At that point, that critical mass, then we're not locking down anymore. We're in a very different set of circumstances. It's not at that point that you want to go and get the virus, and we'll still have measures in place to try and limit the spread of it. But we have many more options, and we perhaps have quarantine that looks very, very different.
Press conference from the Premier just moments ago. Back to your calls, though, on all the stuff that got lost in the wash yesterday, including this issue about goal kicking accuracy for the past month being the worst in the history of the game. Your calls on heaps of stuff, including that kind of stuff, after the break. Essentially, drop punt accuracy at goal is at an all-time low right now. Goal kicking accuracy is at an all-time low. So here we are, the age of professionalism and, 4 assistant coaches per club. There's no mud, perfect grounds, groomed turf. The games at Marvel are all played under a roof, so no wind ever at Marvel. The Sherrins are perfect. Boot development is state-of-the-art. Yet goal kicking was better decades ago in mud and wind. It's getting worse year on year. Accuracy at the moment is running at about 46% this season. So the hook kick has improved some individuals' accuracy. Those that are employing the hook kick are actually improving their own accuracy, and Harry Mackay is one of those. It's a more accurate kick for those that have perfected it. But where we are, we're a couple of years into this new age of the hook kick, and accuracy is still down overall, down on what it was decades ago. Percentage-wise, it's been 46% for a couple of years now, hovering around that 46%. But in 2013, so 8 years ago, before the hook kick, and before high-performance managers came in and took control, it was 50%. So we've gone from 50% back in 2013 to 46%. Well, that was May 20 when I went on a bit of a rant and talked about it being worse than ever. Goal kicking accuracy being below 50%, down to 46%. Well, guess what? This last month, it's got worse. So no wonder scoring hasn't gone up. It's actually got worse in the last month. And the last month, if it continued for the rest of the year, it would be the worst in the history of the game, 150 years of football history and the professional era right now, and yet goal kicking is worse than ever. It's bizarre. It's amazing, and if we could fix that, we would fix scoring. Alan, because the ball would go back to the middle more often, 6, 6 and 6, a reset. You'd have more open play. So if we could fix accuracy, then it would fix the scoring dilemma that we've got. Alan on the road, you there, Alan? You've got a thought on fullback kick-ins?
Yes, mate. Yeah, totally opposite to what you're talking about. The fullback kicking in, they get, how far do they get? They get about 25 metres and they can run down and kick the ball. But they kick it sideways.
Yep.
And then the other bloke kicks it sideways as well back to him, and then they go across the ground again. So, God only knows what's going on. The game is ruined, mate. The game is ruined.
All right, there's a few people coming through saying the game is ruined, and I appreciate your texts as well. 0433 98 11 16 if you want to send through a text on the Tempur text machine, TEMPUR. Mattresses like no other. One here on the text. Keep making excuses for your mate Hocking. Give it a rest, Wayno. The game is crap and people no longer enjoy watching it. So thanks for that. I think the game's better now than it was 5 years ago. But as I said, goal kicking is worse than it's ever been, and the stats say it's the worst it's ever been in 150 years. Dom in Burwood, you wanted to talk about something I mentioned off the top, and that was Liam Stocker.
Yeah, a couple of points, right? Yeah, Liam Stocker, that draft swap that Silvani did has just turned into gold. Three things about him. Number one, he's tough. He's a really good body size for us. Great kick left and right foot. And he adds energy. And the other thing, every time a Carlton player gets bowled over, he's the first one in to fly the flag, and he is just going to get better and better being in midfield. And on your goal kicking, you're 100% correct, Wayne. Thing with Harry Mackay, what he's done, he just is so repetitive. He's got a repetitive action with his hook kick. And equated to golf, right, the 50-metre kick is like the 10-foot putt. Tiger Woods was only 50% as good as he was from 10 feet. But from 5 to 6 feet, which is the 30 to 40-metre kick, he was about 85%. And the kick, the worst shots they miss are the ones from 30 to 40 metres. Some of them miss the goals by 10 metres. And you're right, Jack Silvani went out and just practiced from before the game, and that's the whole thing. And let's be honest, you ever heard a coach come out and say when a team kicked, we lost the game because of poor goal kicking? I reckon there's been 10 games this year the team's lost because of poor goal kicking. And it's the one thing, as you said, 30 to 40 metres, just guys practising, and the game would open up. And I agree with you, Dwayne. You kick a point, the ball goes back to the middle, game on again.
Appreciate your call, Dom. I really do. Pipe, I think the need for a goal-kicking routine is hurting so many players. Melbourne's Pickett is a prime example. His trot in and set shot couldn't be further from his natural walk and run, and will only get worse with fatigue. Jaden Stevenson was the same at the Pies with his crazy ball play on the runway. Yeah, he just fiddled and moved it and tossed it and flicked it. How that can be a good routine, I'm not sure either, to be honest. Chris in Roxburgh Park. Welcome to the program, Chris.
G'day, Dwayne. I'm just ringing up to second what that other fella said about there being too many players on the field and we need less players. I think players are faster and fitter than they've ever been and can cover the ground, a lot quicker than they used to. And I just think, I don't know what the magic number would be, but I think if you could reduce the numbers to a point where players couldn't just set up zones to guard space because the space would be too big and they'd be forced to actually man up, I think the game would be a lot better for it.
Yeah, it's interesting because KB was part of a committee that got together a few years ago and decided what would be put in stone forever that would never be able to be changed by the AFL, and one of those things was 18 players on the field. That had to stay. But, whether we need to have another moratorium of people to get together to overpower what was written in stone 15 years ago, that it has to be 18 on 18, but some people believe that that's part of what makes footy. It's an 18 v 18 on the field game. But, it was 20 once upon a time when they first started the game. You could once upon a time had 22 players on the ground. Then it was 20. It was unlimited when Tom Wills and co first started all this. Appreciate your call, Chris. Damien in Strathmore. You there, Damien?
Yeah, g'day, Dwayne. I think you can blame Steve Hocking for the goal-kicking accuracy. He's the one who brought the man-on-the-mark rule. And just about anyone that has a shot from 45, 50 metres out are running out on a hook to try and gain an advantage, and they're missing them. And you hear the commentators, the special commentators saying, why aren't they doing their normal routine? And that's a direct correlation for the man-on-the-mark rule coming in. They would have normally kicked it straight over the man-on-the-mark and probably kicked it straighter.
But is that the player's flaw for not practicing what they're about to do, Damien? Is that?
But it's the rule that's brought in. He shouldn't have brought the rule in. They brought the rule in about a week before the start of the season. They shouldn't have brought the rule in the first place. That's the most stupid rule to ever come into AFL. Why did it come in?
I don't mind you kicking Steve Hocking in the... Yeah, I don't mind kicking... If you want to kick Steve Hocking in the head for the rule, that's fine. But why is accuracy been going down last year and the year before that? And the year before that then, when Steve Hocking's stupid rule didn't come in? Who are you blaming for that?
Worse, Hey?
Who are you blaming for accuracy being down to 46%?
I don't care what happened 4 years ago. I'm talking about why it's got worse this year. I'm just answering that question. The reason it's got worse this year is because of the man-on-the-mark rule. I don't care what happened 4 years ago.
So if they bring in any other rules, players won't practice to actually take advantage of them. They'll just whinge about the fact that the rule wrecked my goal kicking?
Season. They brought the rule in a week before the start of the season. No one had time to practice over the whole pre-season.
Well, we've got time to practice now, Damien. Can you see that in September?
They hardly do any training. They hardly do any training. Dwayne,
well, they should do training. That's the thing, Damien. They should train. I can see it grand final day, Damien. A bloke kicks 1 goal 4, cost you the grand final, and at the press conference after the game, he blames Steve Hocking. I didn't have enough time to know that you could run around the man on the mark. Let's head straight back to your calls for Midday Madness. By the way, Adelaide Oval will return to 100% capacity for Thursday's clash between Port Adelaide and Melbourne. So 100% capacity allowed for the Adelaide Oval for the game that kicks off the round, which is fantastic. A couple of texts that have come through on the Temper text machine, TEMPUR, mattresses and pillows like no other. One here, I agree with you, Dwayne. Shooting in the NBA has gone through the roof due to practice. If you kick straight, you win. One here also, players can still kick over the mark. They're just choosing to run to the side. And, they're doing something unnatural that they haven't practiced. So my suggestion would be, like the NBA players, to practice it. Hi, Dwayne. The problem is recruiting of athletes rather than natural footballers. I doubt Lee Matthews would have been picked up if he was in the draft these days. Great stat on the goal kicking, which, if you've just joined us, is at an all-time low. In the history of the game right now, it's the worst it's ever been. So in this professional era, it's the worst it's ever been. The goal kicking percentage has gone down to 45.5 in the last month. Players are much fitter and professional athletes now. Ground size has not changed to accommodate, so maybe 16 on the field per team. Players need to practice repeating goal kicking under fatigue conditions. Does this happen? To solve the problem, clubs need to address the problem. West Coast Eagles have been one of those teams that have lived on their accuracy, which has been fantastic for the game. But you probably need a team to win the flag with a ridiculously accurate season for other teams to follow. I believe part of the goal kicking issue is due to the recruitment of players who are more athletes with X factor rather than pure footballers. What's the chances that the social media pressure and mental health problems current players face is affecting players' minds? Years ago, there was no pressure on players. Well, there was pressure on players years ago, but surely they're not thinking of their Instagram account when they're lining up for goal. Mark in Bacchus Marsh, you've got a thought. Welcome to you, Mark.
Dwayne, how you going, dude?
Yeah, good.
All right, a couple of things on the goal kicking. Straight away, I see so many players, they just don't line up correctly. They're walking towards goal, but they're walking towards the behind post. They kick it straight, we go straight through from behind. So they're just not lining up correctly.
So that's alignment practice. That's alignment practice that you have to actually practice to get that right. As silly as that sounds, but think about a golfer with his putting. If you didn't practice it, you won't get your alignment right. Anyway, your next one, Mark.
Now, you're talking about fatigue. I reckon the fatigue thing with goal kicking is garbage because, like, you look at the Dogs against West Coast, they should have had 10 goals a quarter time. They kicked 2 goals 9 or something. St Kilda against Geelong, they had a shocking first quarter. So there's a new stat for you to check, Dwayne. Check end of first quarter scores and
Right.
put the goals against the behinds. And I bet you'll find that it's just as crappy a percentage, 40-odd something. And
Yep,
that means the
45%.
fatigue argument.
Yeah,
That
I
means
like
the
that.
fatigue argument's gone.
Let me write that down. End of first quarter scores. I'll ask Champion Data that one as well to see if it's running at the same all-time 150-year low as it's running for the whole game. Go on, and your next one?
And then there's a third one. Like, for example, the Western Bulldogs. We got Norton, and he's killing us. And he misses that many shots. It's not funny. Even though I love the way he goes about it, I love his intensity, I love everything about him. But when I say killing us, it's from a goal-scoring perspective, goal shooting. Then we got someone like Shaki, who I swear he is the best set shot for goal in the AFL, just playing in the reserves. You put Norton in the back line, sort all our back line issues out right there and then, throw Shaki forward. I'm telling you, if Shaki has got five shots, he kicks a minimum 4 out of 5 every single time. And all of a sudden, the Dogs are winning games by even more. So, you know, we got players that can kick goals that aren't even getting games at the moment, that are dead set, dead-eye shots.
But you're not going to drop. You're not going to drop Norton though, Mark. I appreciate your call and hear your frustration. Josh in Sunbury, you there, Josh?
Mate,
yeah, good.
Look, mate, I'm going to stick up for the players here. I can't believe some of the calls that I've heard. I think if you want to look at averages, look at the averages of kilometres. You've got forwards playing in the ruck these days. Example, Tom Hawkins, who's expected to play in the ruck and play forward. Fatigue does play a massive role, and any of those that say it doesn't, I encourage them to go out to their local oval, do 400-metre sprints, then try and have a shot at goal. But that's not the point that I was bringing. I actually think the game's in quite good nick. The goal kicking is a slight concern, but if you look at disposal efficiency, it's the highest it's ever been. We've got 105 players that are averaging over 80% effectiveness compared to previous years like 2016 where there was only about 70 players that averaged over 80%. And the other thing with goal kicking too was I feel the strategic players, the backmen, a lot of them, like if you look at the Carlton Fremantle game, a lot of like Wiedering and Jones, they were leading their forwards out towards the, 45 degree or more. So I think it's got to do with the way the defenders are playing as well.
Yeah, and there's no doubt whatsoever that defenders are pushing players wide and teams are pushing players wide so if they do get a shot at goal, it's as wide as possible. But there's still no excuse for, the Liam Henry dribble kick that, Fremantle might have won that game. I'm not going to say he cost them the game, but those silly little, when you can straighten up and drop punt it, you've got plenty of time, straighten, drop punt, goal. Instead, you want to run toward the boundary and dribble kick it whilst you're running to decrease your possibility and increase your angle. It's bizarre to me that that's allowed. It's coached to allow it. You've got to coach to stop it, to say, no, you're not going to do this. And yes, you are going to get the training an hour earlier and you are going to practice your goal kicking. I think Patrick Dangerfield had a session during the week as well to improve his goal kicking before last week. And he seemed to be kicking a bit better the way I saw it. Thanks for your call, Josh in Sunbury. Joel in Doreen, you there, Joel?
Afternoon, Glenn. How you going?
Good.
I'd just be curious to know, with the percentages from the goals going down and scores going down, I don't blame hocking at all, but I'd be curious to know how many shots on goal today have been taken by midfielders or non-key forwards, because if the actual key forwards in the AFL aren't kicking as many goals as they were 15, 20 years ago when some of the greats of the game were playing full forward. And I think a lot of it's because of the opportunity they're getting, because your Ablets and Dunstall Mockets were having 10, 15 shots a goal a game, and they were kicking 50%. The Boys, the Franklins in his early days. Nowadays, the guys like the Kennedys, the Mackays, Hawkins, Walkers, they're still actually very accurate. They're over 50%, but they're only having 4 or 5 shots on goal a game. They're only averaging 2 to 3 goals for their career per game. So, of course, the score's going down because the midfielders aren't lowering their eyes and looking for the forwards. They're all having teams that goal on the run from 50 out.
Yeah, which is one of the people that I speak to, and I do speak to a lot of people at Fox Footy and from Champion Data, etc., so I won't name this person, but one suggestion that was given to me a couple of weeks ago was that you allow a person to take your shots at goal. If there's a free kick within range, then anyone can take that free kick. If you mark it, you take your kick. But if there's a free kick, then anyone can take it. It doesn't have to be the guy that was pushed in the back in front of goal. Now, I don't agree with that, as an option, but do we need to get the ball into the hands of specialist goal kickers more often so your specialist goal kicker can take that kick? Because I don't like the idea, like in out on the full, for example, the closest guy takes it. I would like to overthrow that rule and say that your specialist goal kicker can take it. Why does it have to be the guy that just have to be in the vicinity? So in that regard, for a free kick for out on the full, I'm of the belief that your best goal kicker should be allowed to take it. Whether you can give it to somebody else if you're the guy that's pushed in the back, I don't agree with. But we do need to, you're spot on, Joel, we do need to get the ball in the hands of specialist goal kickers more often, because there seems to be a spread of goal kickers which is in vogue, but not everyone can kick straight. Tex Walker can, not everyone can. Jeff in Manor Lakes, you there, Jeff?
G'day, Dwayne. How's it going?
Yeah, good.
I've spoken to you about this a few times, but I will go. I've got a couple of points to make here, so just bear with me. But it all comes down to practice. You look at the NRL players. Yes, they are specialist goal kickers, but what they do is they practice. They practice about 2 shots from each spot before a game. They also do a lot of practice out on the training track. And I'm not talking 10 minutes here, 10 minutes there. I'm talking hours on end. But they actually practice so that they get an understanding of what they do. Now, with that, the most accurate kick so far, and he's about 90% accuracy from set shot at goals, is Graham Myers. Now, he has a very unique style at kicking for goal. But to me, it just all comes down to practice.
Yeah. So you can have the craziest routine of all time as long as you practice that routine and get it right. So when you actually have the shot at goal, you're actually sticking to a routine that you know and you trust and you believe in, so your mindset is a confident mindset. And, Jeff, I'm agreeing with all of that. Graham Myers, I wouldn't teach my kids to kick like Graham Myers, but Graham Myers is confident kicking like Graham Myers. So you've got to let Graham Myers kick like Graham Myers. Jeff in Manor Lakes, I appreciate you calling. Andrew in Nidri, David in Blackrock, Jim in Greenvale, Scott on the road, and David in Melton. We'll come to you all. It's Midday Madness. You call, you get on. 2 hours of your calls. Later on the program, Sean Higgins to have a chat to us. Justin McInerney, the NAB Rising Star of the round. Adelaide star defender Jake Kelly as well. And we understand Martin Pakula, the Minister for Sport and Major Events, will have a press conference after 3 o'clock today where he is expected to confirm the cancellation of the 2021 F1 Grand Prix and MotoGP. And obviously we're waiting to see what the crowd numbers are allowed to be in Victoria. That hasn't been decided for the weekend of footy coming. Has been decided in Adelaide. They're back to 100% capacity for Adelaide Oval games, which is great for the Port Adelaide game against Melbourne on Thursday night. Great to have your company for Midday Madness. Straight back to your calls and your texts. A couple of texts. Goal kicking issues. We no longer recruit pure stay-at-home full forwards as per decades of the past. Thanks for that. We don't need specialist goal kickers, for God's sake. It's not that hard. Need to recruit footballers, not athletes. Thanks for that. And I don't agree with having specialist goal kickers to take the kick if there's a free kick within range of goal. I'm 100% against that, by the way. I think that the players just need to practice more as well. Andrew and Nidri, you there, Andrew?
Yeah, look, it sounds like a broken record here. I don't think it's athlete versus football. I think it's just the players not practicing enough under pressure. And also, their footwear is completely different these days and lack the support through their kicking action as well. I think the way they've got their footy boots these days, it's meant to they're running shoes rather than football boots. And also, and I also think that you look at the, some of the best kicks of football are the ones that kick in the goals and good action. So, it's practice and also footwear. And just one thing I like to see, and this is a bit a sidetracked issue, if the fullback is kicking out, unless it's kicked out more than 50 metres, and if they want to kick short, it's just play on. So there's no. You can kick it to another player, they mark it, fine, but it's play on. So,
well, it's going to be interesting because we've seen a number of incidents this year where you're allowed to run 20 and not have a bounce, or run 25 and not have a bounce. Are they going to change that rule to allow you to run 20 and make the game more exciting before you have a bounce. And if they change that, they're going to have to change the kicking distance as well to a minimum of 20 rather than a minimum of 15. Of course, in about 3 decades ago, it was a minimum of 10, so they extended that to 15 for running bounce and for kicks. Plenty more to come after the break, so stick around. It's Midday Madness. You call, you get on, and I love being part of it. Always great to have your company for Midday Madness. We're heading back to your calls very shortly. 1300 736 736 is the open line, brought to us by Werribee Kia. They're loving your business. If you head down to Werribee Kia, they'll look after you. David, Janan, Jim, the whole team. They would love to see you down there. 1300 736 736 is the open line that's brought to us by Werribee Kia, who have the Kia My22 Cerato now in stock. David, Janan, Aid, Jim, all down there with a huge new and used car showroom. So drop in and tell them we sent you as we head back to your calls on that open line. David in Blackrock, Jim in Greenvale will come to you, Jesse in Richmond, Paul in Geelong, David in Melton, and Scott on the road. We're going to just talk about goal kicking, but it has sparked a few calls given that it is at an all-time low. I mentioned in May on this program that goal kicking was the worst it's ever been when it was at 46%. Well, the last month, it's actually gotten worse. So if there's a reason why scoring hasn't increased this year, it's because goal kicking every year on year, gets worse and worse and worse. It was 50%. It's now down 50% a decade or so ago. It's now down to 45.5 in the last month. And the weekend proved that story. The Suns kicked 10-17. In the weekend just gone, Melbourne kicked 7-13, Adelaide kicked 8-11, Fremantle kicked 8-16, Hawthorn kicked 7-11, West Coast kicked 3-8, and Collingwood kicked 8-13. It is a crisis in the game, and it's stopping goal scoring from being up where it should be. David in Blackrock's got a theory. Welcome to you, David.
Hi, how you doing?
Yeah, good, thanks.
Yeah, I used to be a rugby union kicking coach back in the UK before I moved to Australia. And although they have a specialist kicker, I think the same rules apply. I mean, I think essentially we used to have a 5-step rule. Use the clock, in other words, use the time you've got available, get your breathing right, get the setup right, have a clear routine, and then practice, which is a point that many of your callers have made today. So we would run through that. This is under 19s, and we'd run through that with the 4 or 5 guys in the game likely to be exposed to kicking. You know, at least once a week we go through that routine. And, you know, Johnny Wilkinson, 88% success rate from anywhere on the park. And even though that's a different type of kicking to AFL, I see some of the guys look a bit startled when they get the ball, and they're sort of, you can see them rushing and just not taking their time and getting that routine together.
So, David, let me ask you this question. In rugby league and in rugby union, there is no option to pass it. So you've got no distraction as to whether it's your kick or not, or whether you're going to. So you can take that out of the equation with AFL, because sometimes from 40 metres out, or 45 or 50, they're thinking, okay, what are my other options? But how much do the rugby union and rugby league players practice it? I presume they practice it a hell of a lot. If that's their craft, if that's what they're employed to do, then they do have to spend a lot of time on it, like the NBA players do their free throw shooting.
Yeah, they even get measured in practice on the success rate, you know, so they're put under pressure even in practice. But then also when we simulated pressure in training games, you know, we simulate the fact that someone's rushing you from the line. There's all sorts of other things going on in the background, and it's simulating that got them better on game day. So do you have a theory why AFL players, do you know much about the game of AFL as to why AFL's goal kicking's gone backwards? I'm a long-suffering Crows fan because my stepson's a Crows fan, but I just think they look rushed. They don't have a clear routine quite often, and therefore I'm thinking that they probably don't get enough time practicing. I mean, I know they're not specialists, but if you had a core of that training to instill some of those sort of routines into the process, I think it would improve. You know, so I do agree that it's obviously got worse, no doubt about it. Just even without knowing the numbers exactly, I can see it week on week.
Yeah, Champion Data have confirmed that it is the worst it's ever been. So do you think the 30-second rule, if they push that out to 45, if you had more time, would that fix it? Would it get your heart rate down and give you a better chance of accuracy? Or is that just more time for the players who are confused and not even confident about the kick to get more worried?
Yeah, I mean, I think that would be generous because it's the biggest scoring mechanism in AFL, whereas in rugby union it was not a sideshow, but it tries with a major scoring mechanism, and the kicking was icing on the cake. I mean, kicking for AFL is so key. If they gave them more time, I bet the success rate would go up. But the question is, do you want to give them that generous time,
David, I really appreciate your call. Our call of the week will win 365-day phone plan with unlimited talk and text and 230 gigabytes of data worth $190 thanks to Kogan Mobile. And our caller of the month wins an iPhone 12 mini thanks to Kogan Mobile. We'll put you in the running for that, David, as one of our callers of the day. Love your call and thanks for holding across the news. Jim in Greenville, you there, Jim?
G'day, Dwayne. How you going?
Yeah, good.
Yeah, two things. First, it would be good to know what the actual shots on goal percentage is, as I think that number would be a bit more insightful rather than just the scoreline. So, for example, does your mid 45% mark factor in like rush behinds, or does it also include those that don't make the distance or go out on the full?
Yep.
I think that figure would get us a clearer picture. And secondly, the poor kicking, I think it can be contributed, as mentioned before by a few other callers, in part to teams drafting key position players that are taller. I think they just want to get the competitive advantage in the air rather than the footballing ability. So, for example, if you look at Matthew Lloyd, Wayne Carey, Tony Lockett, they're all 191, 192 centimetres, which is basically 5 to 10 metres shorter than what the current key position players are at the moment. But yeah, no doubt that spending time training goal kicking is also a major issue.
Interesting point, Jim, because one of the greatest ruckmen of all time is John Nichols, and he was 6'1" as a ruckman. So you'd be lucky to be playing anywhere but midfielder if you're 6'1" these days. So yeah, players have gotten a lot taller. You think that is the mechanics for a 200 centimetre player is a lot different than it would be for a guy who's 190?
Possibly, but I also think that because they're focusing more on the height, they're disregarding the other abilities or neglecting the other abilities. But yeah, I think if you look at even in the NBA, for example, if you had a taller player such as, I don't know, like Shaq, he was pretty rubbish in front of the free throw line.
Yeah.
And I know that's been fixed up now, and I think that's because of the training. So, yeah, I think that's about it.
Hasn't been fixed up for all of them. We know Ben Simmons had his problems, and Giannis has got some problems too, especially getting in the time slot, in the time parameter. Hey, appreciate your call, Jim. Nice addition. Paul in Geelong, you there, Paul?
Yeah, thanks, Dwayne. It's probably a question more than anything. Do you think the actual shot on goal has become secondary now, as in the accuracy side of it? Like, blokes these days seem to be more intent on running a clock down and making sure everyone's set up for 30 seconds rather than kicking the goal. So if they get a goal, it just seems to be a bonus. I do
look at the faces of the players and think, and even the crowd, once upon a time, it was all about getting the ball into the hands of Dunstall, or Ablett's got it, or even Billy Brownless. There's so many players. Matthew Lloyd, take your pick. And when the ball got into that player's hands, it was like, okay, Lloydie, it's your job now. So we've got it into our guys' hands, and the crowd, there will be almost this belief that, okay, we're set now because this is our main guy and he won't miss for us. And I think that there is still that for a Tom Hawkins. There's still that for a few players in the league, but the number of players in the league that are those guys has reduced massively, I think. I don't think we have that specialist guy in every team anymore where you're almost, putting it down in your record before he has the shot.
It just seems to be their attention span isn't on the actual shot on goal. It's more on the clock. So, you would think you need more than 3 or 4 seconds to get ready for a shot on goal instead of just using 27 seconds to run the clock down. And then you got 3 seconds to, let's go, we've got to move.
But that'd be a practice thing too, wouldn't it, Paul? Getting your focus right, actually getting a routine that is going to have your shot at goal done within the 30 seconds without having to look at the clock and be worried about it?
Would we be better off just taking the clock away? Like, you don't have a clock on every mark where, around the ground you get 8 seconds. So you go, okay, I'll hang on to it for 7. Is it better off, let's get rid of the 30-second clock? The umpires are mic'd up and eared up so they can get told, 15 seconds is gone, move on. And that way maybe the player can worry about what he's supposed to be doing instead of looking up at the scoreboard, just running a clock down.
Paul, great to have your call. I really appreciate it. Got to take a break because we've got a pretty big story brewing that we'll bring to you in full after the break. We had a big story yesterday when Sam Edmund broke the news about Steve Hocking's departure from AFL and heading to Geelong as CEO. Well, a pretty big story brewing right now. Tom Brown is reporting that Hawthorn is set to provide details of a landmark succession plan between Alistair Clarkson and Sam Mitchell. Tom Morris is reporting that Hawthorn's players have been told that Sam Mitchell will take over as Hawthorn coach in 2023. So Alistair Clarkson to coach the rest of this year, then next year, and then Sam Mitchell taking over. That's according to Tom Morris, who's going to join us straight after the break. Stick around. You're with Dwayne's World.
G'day, Dwayne, how you going?
Good.
You can scratch off Sam Mitchell from Collingwood's list. He said no to their approach.
Hey, you know that for a fact, do you, Ron?
I do.
Well, I'll take that as being confirmed. So just to repeating that, Ron, you're telling me Sam Mitchell is not going to be interviewed at all by Collingwood. He said no.
That's correct.
That was Ron, a caller 2 weeks ago, telling us that Sam Mitchell will not be coaching Collingwood, will not be interviewed by Collingwood. So congratulations to you, Ron, for that report a couple of weeks ago. That has proven to be the case. It was reported in the last 24 hours that Sam Mitchell would not be one of the interviews at Collingwood. So a few people have reported that in the last 24 hours, even though Ron gave it to us a couple of weeks ago. Ron, you're back on the line as well, Ron. Welcome to you.
How are you, Dwayne?
You sounded really confident You sounded pretty confident 2 weeks ago when you gave us that.
Oh, it was a done deal. There's no dramas whatsoever about that.
So did you know about the succession plan 2 weeks ago?
Yes. Yes, I did.
You could have told us that as well, Ron.
Oh, well, can't give you everything. That's what Sam McClure's got to earn his money, doesn't he?
He does. Have you got anything else for us while we got you on the line?
Yeah. Adam Uze with either Mark Williams or Don Pike is the favourite option at the moment as a mentor for 3 years. And Chris Mayne's returning to Fremantle in some type of coaching capacity at the end of the year.
So Adam Uze with either Don Pike or Mark Williams as his right-hand man to coach Collingwood next year.
Is a favoured at the moment. Whether that changes, okay. They're not sure, but that's the favourite option that they're looking at the moment.
All right, Ron, we'll put you in the running as our caller of the week. Gee, you're a good chance to win it as well, by the way, after your call a couple of weeks ago. We don't know who you are, Ron, but it's nice that you call every now and then. Please make it a habit. He's gone into the distance, just drifted off, and hopefully he'll be back soon. Tom Morris, in the meantime, has been good enough to join us, Fox Sports chief AFL reporter, and you can read his report on this succession plan at foxsports.com.au and catch him on AFL tonight, this evening from 7 p.m. on Fox Footy 504, and you can catch him on First Crack on Sunday after bounce, even though he's been on holiday for a week, so he missed last week's First Crack. Welcome back to you, Tom.
Thanks, Dwayne. What a huge news story this is. I can tell you right now that Alistair Clarkson will step aside as Hawthorn coach at the end of 2022, and Sam Mitchell will take over ahead of the 2023 season. Players have just been told, and I guess it explains why Sam Mitchell has, in recent days, rejected Collingwood's advances. Yeah, so it sounds as if this might have been in the wind for quite a while at Hawthorn, that maybe they'd agreed to this, or maybe it was intimated that this was going to happen with Clarko and Sam Mitchell. They hadn't made it official, though. It sounds as if now, all of a sudden, given the speculation, they've decided that they would make it official? Yeah, it's official. So the players have just been told, as I said. It makes perfect sense, but it flies in the face of what Justin Reeves told the Herald Sun, I think even 4 or 5 weeks ago this was. It might have been a couple of months ago when he said that there'll be no handover. So they've obviously changed their mind. They believe that Mitchell's the man to take them forward. They didn't want him to go to another club. And Clarkson will step aside. Now, I'd be intrigued to know, and I don't know at the moment, whether Clarkson was happy with this or whether he didn't want to step aside, and this is a Hawthorn-led decision in a similar way to what Eddie Maguire led the Mick Malthouse handover to Nathan Buckley. So that's a question that will be answered in the fullness of time. But I guess what it does do, it keeps Sam Mitchell at Hawthorn, and it allows a smooth transition without Jeff Kennett having to make a hard call on Clarko, or Clarko having to go behind Hawthorn's back and find another job without Jeff Kennett's approval.
So I can't see Clarko not coaching in 2023 myself, Tom. Does that mean that other clubs can start to think, okay, well, if our bloke doesn't go too well in the next year and a half, we know who is available?
Dwayne, I'll give you some numbers. There's 8 coaches that are out of contract at the end of next year, and no matter how well they're doing this year, well, Clarko's one of them, so 7 other coaches, no matter how well they're doing, I reckon they'll all be a little bit nervous, maybe aside from Chris Scott, as to Alistair Clarkson's availability. Simon Goodwin doing very well at Melbourne, but geez, imagine if Clarko's available. What would Melbourne do there? Stuart Dew at the Gold Coast Suns, even Matthew Nicks and Justin Longmuir are doing great things at Adelaide and Fremantle, but if Clarkson's available, it's a very different story. And one of the things that Clarkson said to the players when he broke the news about 10 minutes ago was that he will focus on the short term, 2022, and Sam Mitchell will focus on the long term, which makes perfect sense. But you'd suggest that Clarkson and his management will be taking plenty of calls next year to see what he's going to do in 2023.
Wow, big story, Tom. And if people want to read about it, they can read foxsports.com.au and click on Tom Morris's story. Anything else out of that story that I haven't asked you that we need to know?
That's just about it, Dwayne. But what's happening at the moment is Justin Reeves, the CEO, and Jeff Kennett, the president, Sam Mitchell, the coach in waiting, and Alistair Clarkson are having a media briefing with various journalists and various people in the media. Now, this was embargoed till 1 o'clock. It's now 1:24, so clearly that's out there now. They've aligned it all up so it didn't leak out before, and it was actually after 1 o'clock that the players were told. So this has been a considered approach from Hawthorn to make this announcement all in one. It's come out, and I'm sure there'll be lots of analysis on Fox Footy tonight. It's a very, very big football story.
Yeah, we'll take your calls on this. 1300-736-736 is the number. What do Carlton do now, knowing that Clarko is available in a year and a half? Do they stick with David Teague and just see how it all rolls? Should Stuart Dew be nervous if he can't get it right in the next couple of years, year and a half? And the other issue, I suppose, Tom, before I let you go, is does Sam Mitchell now not coach Box Hill next year and sit in the box right next to Clarko and almost coach during a bit of next year?
That is surely the logical situation. I mean, Essendon was a disaster last year. I think everyone knows that with John Worsfold and Ben Rutten. But I think with Clarkson and Mitchell, it will actually work a lot better. And it'll be interesting to see what happens towards the end of the year. Let's say if Hawthorn are out of the finals race, whether Sam Mitchell starts to have more responsibility in the box. I mean, Alistair Clarkson will want to do the best job he can, but it's also incumbent on him to prepare Sam Mitchell the best way possible for the club. So there's lots of ramifications as to how Hawthorn will set this up. But you'd imagine that Mitchell won't be coaching the VFL side next year. He'll do that this year. That'll get his experience up. Then he'll be back in not the main chair, but the 2IC chair in 2022.
And I know you don't know, but what would your guess be? Would Clarko be happy with this or not?
My guess is yes. That is my guess. My guess is if he wanted to continue, it's very hard to say, no, you're not going to continue. You're a 4-time premiership coach. So my calculated guess, and that's all it is at the moment, Dwayne, was that Clarko would be happy with this. He gets to see out his contract, as he said he always would. He gets to stay true to his word. And then the world's his oyster after that. He can write his own check, and he can pretty much go to wherever he wants. And, yeah, that Carlton job looms large as well if David Teague can't hold it beyond next year. Wow, it's just one of those footy weeks where it just gets bigger by the day, Dwayne.
Yep, it does. Great to have you on, Tom. I really appreciate you jumping on the line. You can read Tom Morris's story at foxsports.com.au. One on the text here, did I say Matthew Nicks and not David Teague? I was talking about David Teague and Carlton. What do Carlton do now that they're having an inquiry? I certainly didn't mean to say Adelaide or Matthew Nicks. He's in that job for a long time. I can see it. They're getting improvement left, right and centre at the Adelaide Crows. But what does Carlton do now? They're having an inquiry into their coaching staff. We'll take a break. 1300-736-736 is the number. Your calls on that. And Mick and Balan, you've got a thought on the succession plan before we take a break?
Yeah, mate. Everyone laughed at Eddie Maguire when he done it back in the day, and now everyone's doing it. I'm just wondering if now that I know it's a cruel industry, but if Collingwood would keep Harvey on for another year or so and then appoint Clarkson at the end of that, or put the pressure on Clarkson to leave now and give him the job of Collingwood.
Yeah, well, I suppose if Hawthorn's just announced a succession plan, Clarko's not going to leave at the end of the year, you wouldn't think. But you're right, Mick, maybe it's worth the inquiry now. If you're Collingwood, okay, well, can we get him now? We can't wait another year. We'd like him. He's going to be available in 12 months. can we get him in a couple instead in 3 months' time? Gee, it opens up a huge labyrinth, really, of opportunity. We'll take a break. More of your calls straight after a little break for news. By the way, the Justin McInerney is going to join us, the NAB Rising Star, for the round. He's not far away from having a chat to us. Sean Higgins to join us after 2. Jake Kelly from the Adelaide Crows as well. And Brett Phillips with an update on what happened at Wimbledon last night and what might happen tonight. So all that still to come. But your call's the priority as Midday Madness continues. Straight back to your calls on the open line, brought to us by Werribee Kia. 1300 736 736 is the number, the open line for Werribee Kia. You can test drive the new Cerato. They've got it there in stock. Plenty of demos available to you. Send through a text or two as well on the Tempur text machine, TEMPUR. Mattresses and pillows like no other. Collingwood fans, come this on the text, coming out of the woodwork for Clarkson. Why would you go to that terrible list? Clarkson to Carlton at the end of next year. Peter, Carlton should try to prize Clarko out early for next year. Very hard. Another text here, succession plans don't work. Will Mitchell allow long sleeves? It's a nice one as well on the text. If you haven't heard the news, Tom Morris just brought it to us, and Tom Brown also reporting that Hawthorn have officially told the world that there is, and told their players, they've got a succession plan. Alistair Clarkson to coach for the rest of this year and next year, with Sam Mitchell to take over as the Hawthorn coach from the 2023 season onwards. Scott on the road as we head back to your calls. Welcome to you, Scott. Great to have you on.
Yeah, g'day, Dwayne. Just back to getting it through the big sticks, because even Clarko can't kick it for you.
Yep.
Just the one commentator that's been on the ball is Eddie Maguire. I know you've commentated with him a lot, and he's been talking about the contact issue in the game with regards to, the modern apparel and the balls and all that sort of stuff. I think a caller before hit on about the boot change. Well, back in your day, you probably had an old matte finish pair of Puma Kings, and you used the one footy all day, and you played during the day. The modern players, yes, there's fatigue, but the modern players got to contend with a bag of brand new yellow footies each end, slippery night conditions, and the boots have changed. They're kicking with wetsuit and nylon laces, and it's just I feel a bit sorry for him at the moment. You've got the odd guy that can drop the seam on a centimetre patch on his boot, and those guys will be elite forever. But for the rest of them, it's pretty hard to get it to come off flush. Look at them all trying to kick around the corner now. They're paranoid about dropping it parallel.
Yeah, the old leather-on-leather contact, I think, was great. And even when I played, and it was quite a while ago, there were boots that were like slippers back then. I often used Adidas Copa Mundials, but the Diodora boots that I wore were made out of kangaroo hide, and it was the softest, most beautiful kangaroo hide of all time. I'm sure this will upset the vegans in the world, but the kangaroo hide boot, with the softness of the leather, I thought made the most beautiful contact possible with the ball when I was wearing those boots. Now, they're synthetic now, and maybe we've got to move on to synthetic, but synthetic hitting synthetic, paint hitting paint, it's a bit different to leather hitting leather. I agree with you on that. Mick in Essendon, you there, Mick?
Yeah, g'day, Dwayne. Just in regards to the new Mitchell coaching, do you think that these very esteemed players, the Vosses, the Buckleys, the Mitchells, all top class, they're just too early to coach a first team? Do you think there's just not experience? Do you think it's something someone over 50 should be doing, not someone who's late 30s? I just see another Buckley syndrome possibly in the way.
Yeah, look, I don't want to be sort of reverse ageist about it, Mick. I think if you're ready, you're ready. And I think a guy like Sam Mitchell, who's been in multiple programs, so went to the West Coast and was a player at the West Coast as well as a coach at the West Coast, and is now under Clarko's wing, I think it's a pretty good apprenticeship. And I like the fact that he's almost got a year of coaching next year and this year without coaching. So he's coaching Box Hill this year. He gets to coach his own team. Next year he gets to sit next to Clarko on the box and no doubt make some moves, I think, and coach a little bit. I think it's a perfect apprenticeship. I think it's a better apprenticeship than Vossi had. I think it's a better apprenticeship than James Hird had, and almost a better one than Nathan Buckley had in a way. But it comes down to the intelligence and the brilliance of the guy as well. I mean, do you think of, in days gone by, Stephen Kernahan was way too young to come over and be a captain of Carlton. but he came over as a leader. He was a really astute guy, and at 21, he was able to do it. Some guys can do these jobs, even though they're a lot younger than others. But at the other end of the spectrum, I'm not discounting Mark Williams' ability to be able to coach Collingwood either, just because he's at the older end of the spectrum. He's about 4 years older than Chris Fagan, but I still think it'd work. Now, whether Adam Uze, as our caller earlier, Rob suggested, Adam Uze has done the right apprenticeship and will be good enough to coach Collingwood is another big question. And they've obviously got to work out, can they get Don Pike, can they get Mark Williams to help Adam Uze? But I like the idea that these guys that do come in now are getting good mentors alongside them. So if you do get an Adam Uze, for example, at Collingwood, you're going to have a really good guy alongside you. I think you need that. You need that big time. Thanks for your call, Mick. Dylan in Elstonwick. You there, Dylan?
Hey, man. How are you?
Yeah, good.
Yeah, this is happening in the Premier League too, but they've seen a lot of failure like Gerrard, Lampard, like all these superstars. Now it's happening in the AFL. I'm not sure about this coaching strategy.
So you think there is a minimum of time you need to spend in the system learning the ropes before you can walk in, and it's in the EPL it's failed?
Yep, I think it's failing directly. You can see the results. I think you need to have at least a premiership in the VFL or like something.
Yeah. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, how long was he out for, Dylan, before taking over?
He was around. He was out for a while, but he's struggling.
Yeah, he just looks young.
Yeah.
Maybe Dylan. Maybe he's older than he looks. Maybe he does.
He's
maybe
really old. He's like 45 now.
Yeah, right. Okay. Yeah, okay. It's an interesting analogy, Dylan. Someone who knows their EPL, and I'll put you in the running as our caller of the week. Opportunity at the end of this week. We'll draw our caller of the week with the opportunity to get a 365-day phone plan with unlimited talk and text and 230 gigabytes of data worth $190 thanks to Kogan Mobile, with the caller of the month winning an iPhone 12 mini thanks to Kogan Mobile. We need a break. Take a break. We're going to have a chat. We'll take more of your calls after the break as well. The NAB Rising Star of the round, Justin McInerney, will join us. The round 16 NAB Rising Star. Sean Higgins after 2 o'clock. Jake Kelly after 2 o'clock. Plenty still to come on a day where there's been a couple of interesting things today. Goal kicking confirmed by the stats as being the worst it's ever been in 150 years. We're down to 45.5% in the last month. And Alistair Clarkson and Sam Mitchell. The succession plan has been unveiled by Hawthorn. Clarko to coach for the rest of this year and next year. And then Sam Mitchell to coach Hawthorn in 2023. More of your calls coming up after the break. Great to have you company. The succession plan. Do you like it if you're a Hawthorn fan? Do you not like it? 1300 736 736. Hawks have made it official. They're handing over the reins to Sam Mitchell at the end of the 2022 season. So Clarko to coach the rest of this year and next year. And then it's over to you, Sam Mitchell. David in Hampton East, as we head back to the calls in the open line, brought to us by Werribee Kia. Welcome to you, David.
G'day. I'm a Hawks fan and still absorbing the news, but I don't think it's going to work. I like the clarity of the vision, but I just think there's going to be so much speculation about where Clarko goes next and what's in it for him. Like, he hangs around for a year and a half. We're not going to make finals probably next year. So what's the point, you know?
Yeah. No, I get what you're saying, David, and I don't know what Clarko's thinking. Obviously, it's always hard to know what the reality is. But maybe Clarko has said, I've got a contract for next year, and I don't really want to be the guy that breaks it. But I am happy to sit and work alongside Sam Mitchell and depart Hawthorn at the end of my contract. You would hope that this is something that Clarko is really excited about, David. But what you're saying about the speculation, that is going to be a fact next year. It'll be a fact tomorrow, let alone next year, David.
He's too good a coach, though, to just be a mentor. I mean, it's great. Like, you can't think of anything better. But he's the hottest coach in the game. And just the speculation around it is going to be like Carlton will go after him, everyone will go after him, and it'll put even more pressure and just make too much of an issue next year. That is, unless he doesn't want to keep coaching and he might go into a director of football role at Hawthorn, which would be great. But, you know, I just can't imagine a coach of his calibre, you know, training up Sam Mitchell as good as it is and sitting around doing that for a year when he could be doing anything else.
Well, just to advance your point even further, David, if Clarko does want to stay in coaching, then he'll spend all of 2022 helping Sam Mitchell become great, and then knowing he's going to coach against Sam Mitchell in 2023 at another club.
Exactly. It's just not going to work, Wayne. As much as I love it, he's too good. He's too good, and it's good to have clarity of vision and not have all the speculation as a Hawthorn fan about what's going to happen.
Yeah,
but wouldn't be surprised if it happens at the end of this year.
Yeah, I can see you're right about the assistant things, like telling Jason Dunstall, hey, we've got this new really good young full forward, but we want you to play another year, just be a decoy. Whether it works or not, and whether Clarko is going to coach in 2023 at another club, and what would 2022 look like if Clarko knows that he's coaching against Sam Mitchell in 2023, and who knows, he might even be able to know who he's going to coach in 2023 halfway through 2022. Justin in Wandon, you there, Justin?
I was going to ask two things. One was similar to what Dave just talked about, so I won't bother asking about that. But that bloke that rang up about Stephen Gerrard, he's just coached Rangers to an unbeaten season to win the Scottish Premier League. So Stephen Gerrard's doing all right for a young coach. Yeah, there's a couple of texts that come through, and thanks to everybody that sent a text through on the Temper text machine. Steve Gerrard, struggling, ? He won the Scottish Premier League. So well clarified, Justin. Did you have another point to make? I appreciate it. I was going to ask what Clarko's going to do in 2023, but you just went through that with Dave, so I won't bother asking about that. No, I appreciate it, Justin. It is interesting because that will be now, the questions will start to fly. What are you going to do in 2023? Are you happy about this? Are you going to become a director of football? What does a team like Carlton, who are going to get a piece of paper with the review on it to assess at the end of this year, what if the review is not that favourable for David Teague, but it's not unfavourable either? Do they then say, okay, well, there's a bloke available at the end of this year. Well, next year we're better off just hanging around and see him. If we do improve, and if we don't, we know who we might be able to get. It's a lot of coaches that might feel under pressure. Stuart Dew's already under pressure, but if he has another bad year next year, we know that he's going to be under pressure. Campbell Brown's been good enough to join me. I will head back to your calls very shortly, by the way, on that open line. But Campbell Brown, former Hawthorn Premiership star, who's decided to wander into my studio from SEN Track's studio. So don't flick to SEN Track just yet. Campbell, welcome to you. Great to have you on.
Yeah, how are you?
Where were you and what were you doing and what was your immediate thought when you heard of this?
I was trying to tip some winners, Ballarat, and obviously when the news broke, look, I can't say I was absolutely surprised. I think the timing of it all probably forced Hawthorn's hand a little bit, didn't it, with the announcement last night that he was withdrawing from the Collingwood coaches race, and that probably raised all sorts of questions as to why would you do that unless you had something in concrete locked away for the future, and obviously that's the case. And there was always a little inkling that when he left the West Coast Eagles and broke his contract there, because he was still contracted for a couple more years at the Eagles, to come back to Melbourne and be a coach at Hawthorn, as to, okay, that's interesting. He always appeared like he'd be the incumbent to Alistair Clarkson, but obviously until now, no one knew categorically. So people like you knew that this was an option. So you are surprised by the announcement that it is now fact? Oh, yeah, a little bit. There's just been a lot of speculation, hasn't there? And I think it's a really mature and positive approach from the Hawthorn Footy Club. I mean, we've seen a handover once before in AFL recent history, and you could probably argue that didn't go to plan. It did initially, Mick Malthouse to Nathan Buckley, but then things went a little bit south after that. So I wouldn't expect that to happen at all. The good thing with both parties is, Clarko's going to be coaching for another season and a bit, and Sam Mitchell's there at Box Hill at the moment, and he's already built a really strong relationship with a lot of the young guys and the rest of the senior group, and he can now work towards being the senior coach together, and I think that's best for the Hawthorn Footy Club. So will it work? I think it'll work. Yeah, it'll work fine. Both guys have always put Hawthorn first, and I think Mitch is going to be a really good senior coach. There's no doubt about that. I've sat through a couple of his team meetings at Box Hill, and his communication is outstanding. He's certainly got the hunger to improve and be the best coach he possibly can. And I think now it just takes all the guessing out of it. You don't need to go and present in the middle of the year while you're at Hawthorn trying to coach Box Hill for other jobs that may or may not become available. You can just look ahead towards when you'll get the senior coaching job in 2023, and it should be pretty seamless.
So how much of the coaching do you think you'll do next year then, Sam?
Oh, they'll probably help him do a little bit. John Worsfold, Ben Rutten sort of stuff. They reckon that Rutten was doing significantly more in his final year as assistant coach.
It's working now at Essendon under Ben Rutten, but it didn't seem to be working at Essendon last year the way it was working.
Yeah, and it can be hard. It can be really difficult, but I think the great thing about Hawthorn and their board, and Jeff Kennett cops some criticism, but he's a very strong leader. And Richie Vandenberg is the footy manager, the head of football on the board there. They've got really good, strong people that would have been working through this scenario for some time. It's now public, but they'd have a plan all the way through, and now it's just up to everyone to execute it. And they don't have egos. Healthy egos, you have to have in football clubs. But as I mentioned, Clarko and Mitch have always got on well from a player-coach, now as a coach and assistant coach, and their relationship's always been strong.
So do you see Clarko as a long-term AFL coach? Do you think he'll coach somewhere else in 2023, or do you think there's a director of football role more likely for him somewhere?
I've always seen Clarko as a career coach. I've thought for a little while that, if his time ended at Hawthorn, he'd be a perfect fit for every other club out there, obviously, with his resume, his knowledge, and he knows what it takes to be successful. He's rebuilt footy clubs. Once he's got them there, he's been really innovative with game plan and the way that the game's played, and got success out multiple times. So I can see him coaching elsewhere if he wants to. He might get to that stage in his life where he wants to take a step away from it, but he'd be a really good fit for a lot of footy clubs.
Yeah, because when we look at the way it's worked so far, Roos to Longmire and Roos to Goodwin and Worsfold to Rutten, they've all been situations where the guy that's on the way out hasn't gone and coached somewhere else. So This is a little bit different if we're thinking that Clarko, during 2022 is going to be enticed by somebody by phone calls for 2023.
Yeah, exactly right. There's still a fair bit to play out there, but I think he might need a freshen up after almost 20 years as a senior coach. It'll really be up to Clarko, but he'll certainly have those options you could imagine if he wanted them.
Great to have you, Brownie. I really appreciate you jumping on the line. I'm sure that your listeners on SEN Track have missed out on a winner or two because you've joined me, but I was the big winner. Thanks for your time. We'll talk soon.
Thanks, Dwayne.
Former Hawthorn Premiership star Campbell Brown, and you can hear more of him on SEN Track. I think he's back there after 3. Only joking, he's back there in about 5 minutes, but hopefully you'll stick with me until 3 o'clock. Been a massive week for big news breaking. Yesterday, the news of Steve Hocking departing the AFL to go to Geelong as their CEO, brought to us by Sam Edmund, live on the program yesterday, broke that news. News today, obviously, that the F1 Grand Prix and the MotoGP won't be happening this year as well, which is pretty big, but, of course, biggest of big. The statement is now out from the Hawthorn Football Club. Hawthorn Football Club has announced it will implement a succession plan which will see Alistair Clarkson coach out his current contract before handing the senior coaching reins to Sam Mitchell from 2023. Clarkson will coach out his current contract, continuing to lead the Hawks for the remainder of the 2021-2022 season, with Mitchell continuing as head of development and Box Hill senior coach for that same period. The club had previously committed to having these discussions at season's end, but with the changes in the coaching landscape over recent weeks, the timeline of these conversations was accelerated. So there you go. That's official from the Hawthorn Football Club. They've put out that press release now to confirm the story that we brought to you an hour ago when we had Tom Morris letting us know that the succession plan was being made official.
Worried about your walnuts? Worry not, my friend, because Manscaped have got you sorted. The Performance Package has everything you need to keep your boys looking great. And the Crop Preserver and Crop Reviver will have them smelling and feeling fresh. And right now, get 20% off and free shipping with the code SEN at manscaped.com. That's 20% off and free shipping at manscaped.com with the code SEN. What are you waiting for? Manscaped have got you sorted. When it comes to ball sports, get on to manscaped.com.
Got a few callers on the line. Andrew in Hyatt, Cameron in Sale, Dave in Turidan, Paul in Canberra and Mark on the Limestone Coast. We normally just do 2 hours of Midday Madness on the 3-hour program of Dwayne's World, but we'll take more of your calls after the break. So another hour of Midday Madness coming away. So the promise stays. You call, you get on, and a few people have called, so we'll promise we'll get you on after the break. Still to have a chat to us today, Sean Higgins a little bit later on, and Adelaide defender Jake Kelly, but we'll see how we go. We might be able to do an interview or two tomorrow because this is pretty big news, especially if you're a Hawthorn fan. More of your calls next. Always great to have your company. Thanks for joining me for Dwayne's World. We'll get back to your calls very shortly. Cameron, Dave, Paul and Mark on the Limestone Coast. But it's a massive story. He's the greatest coach of the modern era, Alistair Clarkson. He's currently coaching Hawthorn for the 17th season. He's going to coach Hawthorn for 18 seasons. It's been confirmed by the Hawthorn Football Club that a succession plan will see Sam Mitchell take over in 2023. So Clarko to coach the rest of this year and next year, 2022, which will be his 18th season as coach. 4-time premiership god, really, of the Hawthorn Football Club. He's the greatest modern-era coach that we've seen, and the Hawthorn Football Club have decided that it's time he departs. He is the biggest premiership-winning coach the Hawthorn Football Club has had as well. It's an amazing story. And it's great to have your company for Kogan Mobile, just $4.90 for 30 days on Dwayne's World. Great to have the company of one of the Hawthorn all-time greats as well, Dermot Brereton, on the line. 5-time premiership day, 5-time premiership night gun. Welcome to you, Derm. Great to have you on.
Hello, Dwayne. How are you, mate?
Yeah, good. Did you see this coming? I presume you might have seen it coming in the wind, but to have it official like this is huge.
100% honest, I had no idea. Did not see it coming at all. I honestly thought it would go through to coach through to about 2024-5. The guys that are playing now, like that, their young brigade who look really good, Day and those types of boys, I thought he'd see those through to maturity. That was just a rough guess. I thought he'd try and go stay the course of seeing 3 generations of premiership players. So I thought he might back himself to win one in 2024 or 2025, something like that, and then call it quits. That was my own read on it. But inaccurate and was not unusual, I might add. And he's decided 18 years is enough. I was just having a brief think while I was listening to your intro there. 17 years now, 18 years at the conclusion of season 2022 next year. At a rough estimation, I doubt there'd be half a dozen coaches that have coached for 18 seasons at the one club. I don't even think
I mean, you might be going back to the 20s. Yeah, you're right. And to think that he's coached more games for Hawthorn than any other Hawthorn coach in history, and he's got more premierships than any other Hawthorn coach in history. John Kennedy, who's got his own statue, has 3 premierships as coach. Now, he's a Hawthorn icon, we know that, but Clarko's coached 4. The great Alan Jeans, who you played under for a long period of time, I don't want to say only coached 3, but he coached 3 of that 5 premiership era with Alan Joyce coaching the other 2. I mean, there's just no second in a way when you look at the numbers and the weight of the resume of Alistair Clarkson.
Yeah, it's rare air, isn't it? When you take Kennedy, even David Parkin will say that his first year of coaching, Kennedy handed him the list and said, "This is the healthiest list of all time. You should win a premiership with this. I'll sit next to you." And he virtually sat in the pilot seat, the navigator seat with him. So that was a very kind way of seeing Parko into the job too, who turned out to be one of the all-time great coaches as well. And Alan Jeans coached a 4th at St Kilda. So, but having said that, it's to do it at one club it's just rare. It's just rare air, isn't it? It is something really, unless Damien Hardwick wins another one, it's hard to see a coach on the horizon doing it.
So is it the right idea? Is it the right decision?
I would think that it is totally Parko's decision. And when you're at Hawthorn, you understand...
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Parko. I said Clarko. Yeah, Clarko's decision. When you're at Hawthorn, you understand the way they think. They rarely gift games. They rarely allow people... they give them latitude. So when you finish your career, everything you've got, you can turn around and you can say, I earned it. So I would say that there's no way they would look at it and say, we don't want to lose Sam Mitchell, so we will force a handover. I would imagine the Hawthorn way that's in their blood would be to say, we take the best coach we've got at that period, at that time, and that's who we choose for our coach. Thereafter, I think it's in the hands of the coach whether he wants to or not. So Clarkson, I think, would say 18 years. What's Alistair's age now? I think he's roughly our age, isn't he? Sort of mid-ish 50s, maybe just over the hump of the 50s.
Yeah.
So
53.
Probably 53. There you go. So he's coming to it'll be 55 when he finishes. He's probably coming to the point in life where, as crude as it sounds, he's making $1 million a year. Money isn't an issue to him anymore, setting up his life. So I think he's probably feeling like I want to enjoy some of it while I still have all my wits and all my faculties, and I'm a fit and able man, and I can enjoy life with my family. He probably feels that 55 is probably the right age to do it.
Yeah, and when you look at it in perspective, I mean, you could go back to Jock McHale, 8 premierships with Collingwood, 1912 to 1949. But all the coaches that have coached more games than Alistair Clarkson have coached multiple clubs. Mick Malthouse, Kevin Sheedy, even coached multiple clubs. I know he went to the Giants as the guy to get him started, but he still coached multiple clubs. So are you of the belief that Alistair Clarkson will coach elsewhere?
I think if this is Alistair's call, and you wouldn't rule it out. The one thing I would say, though, is I would be absolutely earnest in my belief that Alistair Clarkson, if he retires at the end of season 2022 from coaching Hawthorn, I don't think he will have an involvement, a very significant involvement in football in 2023. If he ever does decide to coach again, it'll be like Lee Matthews after Collingwood. He'll have a couple of years just cruising around doing what he wants. He might, work 1 or 2 games a weekend, with his... people would love to tap into his mind in the media and say, can you be our special comments in the box? They would... that would be invaluable. So he'll have a small involvement in football. He might do the Lee Matthews thing. And then somebody might get to him and say, we need you. You come and coach us.
So, just a correction, Dick Reynolds also only the one club, coached 415 games with Essendon and 4 premierships. So, ahead of Clarko, premiership-wise, there's not that many. I mean, even Mick Malthouse has coached the most games of anyone, 3 premierships. It's just bizarre to see a guy who, in some ways, is still in the peak of his powers. And he's this Hawthorn icon that we've talked about has been told that you're not required beyond next year. It's still a bit hard to fathom in my mind.
So do you believe that he's been told he's not required?
Well, they're not renewing his contract and extending it. So is that putting two together and getting 5 or?
Yeah, my belief is that Alistair would be. Alistair said it might about do me. You just don't let a coach like that go.
So you think
that's my read
Clarko might have given it away?
Yeah, that's my read on it. Yeah, so I mean, you can word it whichever way you want. That to me, it would be a decision reached in unison, but Clarkson would have the major call in it. I don't think he. I don't think he's the kind. I don't think the club would say to him, "We won't be going ahead with you. I mean, he's the ideal man for any club, isn't it? The only reason you do
so
that
you
is
think that if they had their choice, they would have extended Clarko's contract, but it might be Clarko saying that I don't really want to go on beyond my contract. And just a Jeff Kennett quote from the statement Hawthorn released today, by the way, Alistair has served us well in his time at Hawthorn, but we must put our emotions into second place and make the tough but right calls for our club's future.
Yeah, well, that's Jeff's vernacular. And Jeff's management style has always been, he was always, even the way he went about the presidency of Hawthorn, he believed that 2 terms was enough for a president of a football club and should be turned over. So, look, that probably feeds into what you're saying more than what my read on it would be, that there might have been an agreement reached, a consensus reached, that 18 years might be enough. My view, my stance on it is he's still the best coach in it, and there's nothing to suggest he wouldn't be the best coach in it in round 24, 2022.
Yeah, it's a bizarre sort of way to try and understand what's right until we hear from Alistair Clarkson. It's going to be difficult to know, so it's going to be interesting to hear Alistair Clarkson himself explain it to us so we get an understanding of the truth as to the way it did
the one thing
transpire.
I'd say, Dwayne, if it isn't totally Alistair's call, it will make for a very, very uncomfortable 2022 round 1 to 22.
Yeah, it's hard to add anything to that, Derm. Been great to have you. I really appreciate you picking up the phone at short notice. But do you think Hawthorn's on the rise? Do you think it could actually work to the point that Sam Mitchell takes Hawthorn back to the promised land pretty quickly?
Sam's a pretty tuned-in football person. His IQ on football is he's in the ridiculously brilliant category. When you listen to him, when you're at the club and you can hear him talk about various aspects of football, as I say, he's ridiculously intelligent with his footy IQ. But having said that, some of the greatest coaches of all time were very basic with their footy IQ. They just reached players very well. So there's so much that goes into coaching. So, he's probably proving during his recent journey and this year as well with Box Hill Hawks. I think he's coaching the Hawks, Box Hill. Is probably proving that he does have that ability to reach players and engage with them. And it's a slightly different era now, how you engage with players as well, I might add. Yeah, the old days are a bit gone. But having said that, there was one thing when you mentioned Dick Reynolds, when you mentioned Jock McHale, every person, when they are in the moment of that era, they call themselves the modern era. So you can't really, denigrate somebody because it was 90 years ago. At that time, it was their modern era. Yeah.
Great to have you, Derm, and I'll catch you at Fox Footy on the weekend. We'll talk soon.
Love to, Dwayne. See you, mate. Bye-bye.
Derm Reardon, who I've also stolen from Bob and Andy's program, by the way, as well, 5-time premiership star. The AFL has also confirmed in the last half an hour, given this has been a pretty big news day, we haven't got to this, but confirmed that Mars Stadium in Ballarat will host the Giants versus the Suns clash. It'll be a Sunday early start, so 12:40 p.m. Sunday start. We were of the belief that game would be in Ballarat. It's now been confirmed as being in Ballarat. Okay, back to your calls. 1300 736 736. Cameron in Sale. Welcome to you, Cameron.
Yeah, g'day, mate. What I think what everyone's forgetting about with this news today with Clarko is, there's a pretty big opening at the AFL at the moment, and it would not surprise me if Clarko got a phone call last night or in the preceding couple of days, sounding him out for Hocking's job.
Yeah, which I think he'd be great in, Cameron, except for the fact that you can't announce a succession plan and then a week later say, "Oh, we're not doing it now," can you?
Yeah, well, that's only if everyone is on board with the succession plan. We might find out in the next day or two that he was told there's a succession plan and that he does walk.
Yeah, well, there's been speculation as to whether Clarko was asking for an extension and Hawthorn didn't give him the extension, but he was happy to coach out his contract and do the right thing. But again, until we hear from Alistair Clarkson, we don't know what the fact is. But the bottom line is Clarko has, given that it's been announced, agreed to it as being the right thing to do at this point in time. And it's hard to think that Hawthorn in a week or two's time, or Alistair Clarkson in a week or two's time, will say, no, it's not going ahead now, given how much has obviously gone into the decision to announce it as public. Dave in Tooradin, you there, Dave?
I am, mate. Yeah. Look, it brings up a big conflict of interest because I'd like to see what the details of the contract are. Can Clarko coach another team in 2023? If that's the case, he surely can't be coaching Hawthorn next year.
Yeah, unless he doesn't know that he's coaching in 2023 until the end of 2022. So he coaches out 2022, books a holiday to the Greek islands for 2023, and then someone knocks on his door and says, can you cancel that holiday? We want you to coach.
Yeah, it just seems a little bit bizarre. I don't think all the other handover coaches haven't coached another team for, I know Malthouse.
Yeah.
He went to Carlton, but he had a year or two off, I think, didn't he?
Yeah, so, I mean, Hawthorn could come to an arrangement where they do essentially pay him enough to have him not coach in 2023. But, we're speculating, Dave, so it's hard to know what's going to happen. But at the moment, it sounds as if he's coaching in 2022 and the options are open for 2023. Paul in Canberra, welcome to you, Paul.
How are you, Dwayne?
Good.
In terms of the future, if Clarkson decides to keep coaching, then there's one club that was already aligned with his overall philosophy of not rebuilding from the ground up, and that is Geelong.
So you think he'd be a chance to go to Geelong?
Well, I think if you line up the extra year, that gives Scott 2 years to get that flag, and then he's been there for quite a while, and they both don't believe in dropping down the ladder. So it's pretty obvious to me.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see if Chris Scott coaches 2 flags in the next 2 years, whether he gets the extension or whether he just get an extension at the end of this year because he is contracted for next year, Chris Scott. If he coaches a flag this year, whether Geelong's new CEO, Steve Hocking, locks him in a longer-term deal. Mark on the Limestone Coast, you there, Mark?
Yeah, mate. In my opinion, there's 2 possibilities. Possibility number 1 is if this goes ahead, let's just say it's the truth, he won't coach again. If he's at the club next year, that takes him getting close to mid-50s and 18, 19 years. I think he'll pack it in. That'll be it. Possibility number 2 is that it's a Kennetism, sort of a statement that's not true, a bit like a Trumpism.
Right.
I think that the longer Collingwood doesn't announce a coach and Carlton, there could be something going on. Why not say that he's going to be there next year, but then at the end of the year allow Carlton or Collingwood to take him, to take the contract, so to speak, and to free up the money as well.
Maybe Hawthorn actually believes Sam Mitchell needs another year as an assistant before he's ready. So they don't want to leave Sam Mitchell suddenly coaching in 2022 if they, at the moment, sound like they believe that he needs another year in the system alongside a guy like Clarko.
Maybe,
but you're right, things can change.
Yeah,
you're right, Mark. Things could change at the end of the year. You're right. I mean, the truth...
If you're Clarkson, right?
Yeah.
If you're Clarkson and you are hungry and you do want to continue coaching, why would you waste a year? Why would you waste a year at Hawthorn, making them stronger, when you could be building at another club, getting closer to your next flag if you are hungry?
Yeah, well, maybe right now, and this is speculation, we don't know, but maybe Clarko is of the thought that he might not want to coach beyond 2022 anyway, so we'll just see how the lay of the land is at the end of 2022. Have I still got the hunger? Have I still got the passion? Maybe he won't coach in 2023. But maybe he won't know that until the end of 2022, even though he probably have some idea right now whether he will or not. Max in Williams Landing, David in Frankston. We'll come to you after the break on the day that it was announced by the Hawthorn Football Club that Sam Mitchell will take over from Alistair Clarkson to coach in 2023. It's a succession plan. Clarko coaching for the rest of this year and next year at the Hawthorn Football Club. He'll see out his contract. You with Waynesville?
I've got no doubt at some point in time he'll be an AFL coach. The important thing for both Sam and probably Hawthorn too is that he just doesn't do that prematurely. I've seen a lot of guys over the last 10 years, decorated servants of the AFL, become coaches by the time they're 34, 35 or 36 years of age. It's a really, really difficult caper if you go into it prematurely.
That was Alistair Clarkson, the Hawthorn coach, a couple of weeks ago on the ABC, detailing his thoughts on Sam Mitchell and Sam's ability to coach. That was the 6th of June on the ABC. We're heading back to your calls shortly, but been speculating or talking with Derm a few moments ago about, be interested to see what Alistair Clarkson's thoughts were on all of this. Jeff Kennett and the Hawthorn Footy Club have released a statement to Hawthorn members, so I'll read you that statement because it does put a bit of clarity around it. And this is from the statement. About 3 weeks ago, our coach, Alistair Clarkson, approached his direct report and head of football, Rob McCartney, and suggested that, given what had occurred at Collingwood, maybe the time had arrived when we at Hawthorn should consider the club's position regarding our future coaching needs. Rob elevated Alistair's suggestion to our CEO, Justin Reeves, who in turn elevated it to me as president. Given Clarko had raised the matter, and out of respect to him, I notified board members on Friday, 25th of June, that our scheduled board meeting on Monday, 28th of June, we would be discussing Alistair's request. After a long discussion at that board meeting, we made two important decisions. One, that we would not renew Alistair Clarkson's contract when it expired at the end of the football season in 2022. And two, that we want him to complete his contract with us and coach the team in 2022. And this is Jeff Kennett. Continuing, let me briefly explain the thinking behind each decision. Alistair, by the end of 2022, will have been our senior coach for 18 years. By any assessment, that is a long time for any individual to be in the same job with the same employer. In this case, our club. Alistair, with the players he has had at his disposal along those 18 years, has been remarkably successful, and no coach has matched his record in recent times. However, the club has been pursuing a strategy that is building our team of and for the future. In considering the next 5 to 10 years, it was felt extending Alistair's contract into that period was simply unrealistic. It would have extended his term as coach to 23 or 28 years. We needed to put into place the leaders for the next decade, and that includes the coach. We informed Alistair of the board's decision last Wednesday, 30th of June. Both Alistair and the board decided not to make any announcement until this week to ensure we did not interfere with the build-up to Sean Burgoyne's wonderful 400th game. Alistair, as you know, was the force that encouraged Sam Mitchell back to Hawthorn 2 years ago. It was always hoped that Sam would prove worthy of one day succeeding Alistair as senior coach. And this goes on, the Jeff Kennett release through the Hawthorn Football Club to the members. The first year he was with us, Sam was an assistant coach to Alistair. This year, to further his experience, we appointed Sam the coach at Box Hill to give him the experience of managing and being responsible